Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, and here with me once again is the immaculate Jasper Lane.
Always great to be here with you.
And before we start, I'll just plug one thing real quick. Over on Royal Road, I've written the first chapter of a free novel. Yes, it's going to be entirely free, and it is called Victor Tempestson. And well, I'm needing people to proofread it and go through it for fun. So if you have the time, do check that out. It's pretty much a traditional knight is stranded and stuck dealing with a kind of Frankenstein Dracula style horror setting
Ooh.
and story. So yeah, there's a bit of mystery, horror, and of course fantasy and honor all mixed in together. So that's basically what I've been working on when not working on YouTube for the past while.
It sounds really interesting. I'll have to check it out once we're done recording.
Oh, feel free, Jasper. Feel free. Thank you for that. Anyways, now today, as you can see from the title, we're going to be discussing one of my favorite characters of this era, Aemond Targ. And Aemond is honestly one of the most badass, psychotic, and funny, I think, characters in this whole escapade of an era because he just creates one big mess after another. He's not incompetent, but he's just I don't know, like he just in the book at least he goes from one murder to another, it seems. And I only say that because I just find him a riot.
He definitely is kind of in the same boat as Damon for me. I mean, I don't like him, but he is very, very entertaining. And I think he's only going to get more entertaining. And I'm very much looking forward to what they're going to do. And especially in the show. Like, obviously, I know what they're going to do with him in the books because they're already done with
Yeah,
him. But I'm very much looking forward to the show counterpart as well and how they're going to handle a couple of future aspects.
yeah, same. But in the book, we're first introduced to Eamon as a child. Same with the show, and him and some of Rhaenyra's sons kind of bully each other. They go back and forth until Eamon eventually um, has quite the incident when his eye is stabbed out, which is pretty horrifying and traumatizing for anyone. Where I think this is when, now, before then, you kind of had a bit of the sense, at least between the two women, that it was just them being catty with each other, both in show and book. And then you have the kids who are just being brats. This is when things get um, quite real. And it just, this is when first blood is truly drawn. And ignoring the one idiotic scene of Alicent and the knife in the show, um, the thing about Aemond is that for the longest time there is no vengeance, there is no um, payback. But in the book, I'm just going to say Aemon truly is the kind of guy who revenge is a dish best served cold. And he is honestly in the show, he is so well acted. I don't really know what to say. He blew me away.
Yes,
Um,
that is Ewan Mitchell, who's the actor for Aemond, and Ewan, he's not a very big actor, I would say, by any means. But my first introduction to him was actually as the priest boy on The Last Kingdom. That was my introduction to him as an actor some odd years ago.
oh, I've seen Last Kingdom. I actually weirdly eventually got. I found that the actor for Alf Ilfred in there was quite good, but everything else just tired me out.
Yeah,
But
I do feel like the last of it was a bit of a slog. Uhtred got on my nerves. But anyways, this isn't about the Last Kingdom. This is about House of the Dragon, specifically Aemond. And Aemond,
oh, I
what's
was
not...
just going to say that
Oh,
Ewan Mitchell was a was a good high point for that show.
yeah, I think... I don't know what it is, though, about him, though, but I know... I know he's not... Ewan Mitchell isn't that old by any means. Maybe it's just because of the hair. Ewan Mitchell, I think, is the same age as me. I'm 25, he's 26, or something along those lines.
Ye-
He looks old as Aemond. He looks distinctly old as Aemond. Like he looks older than his mother.
Yeah, he's about 6 years younger than I am, and he does look older than even I do, I think. But there's a gravitas he carries with his roles. I very much look forward to his future career.
Oh yeah, I definitely think there's a lot they could do with him. Maybe one of the reasons why I feel he's too old though is probably because he's only 3 years younger than his mother. Like
Yeah.
I know they got it on pretty quickly in medieval times, especially Game of Thrones, but that's a bit of a stretch even for them, right?
Well, Aemond is supposed to be at the end of the season 19 years old. We'll just clip the end of the first part and continue going from where we're at now.
Sorry about that. A little bit of a power outage there. But anyway, so yeah, at the time of the story, Damon is supposed to be, 19 to 20 years old. But they aged everyone up, as Game of Thrones is prone to do, for, good reasons, all things considered. It seems like they just
Oh, I
forgot to age up the mother.
yeah. Although I got the feeling that Aemon was almost roughly the same age. It's Aegon who seems to me to be younger than what he was, so that I'm utterly flabbergasted and confused about the ages.
Yeah, because actually what surprised me, because that's the funny thing, you say that the actor for Aegon is looks younger, and you're right about that, but the actor is actually a little bit older. The actor for Aegon is 28. I think a lot of it is stature. When you see someone just a bit shorter, you always think the taller one's the older brother.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
And speaking as someone who has a smaller younger brother, that's the reason why I grew my facial hair out to look older.
Ah,
Right.
well, yeah.
So, anyways,
To be
in regards getting back to Aemond, though, I mean, I do think, all things considered, the casting was great for him, and
honest,
I think, in regards, he's obviously a much more sympathetic character in the show than the books.
I don't like that.
You don't like that. I think, yeah, I think we were going to talk about this a bit more in depth. So you're not a fan of the more sympathetic aspect to him.
No, no. Now it's weird because I found Joffrey and Ramsay to be kind of boring
Mm-hmm.
in how they were portrayed. I was just like, oh yeah, one note evil, giggly, moronic kid. Yeah, got it. Seen it a million times. All right. But the thing with Eamon that I liked in the book was that he he had a viciousness that was not simply him being a giggly little madman who's just um excuse me, who's just supposed to be cuckoo with no brains and no balls, but he actually had balls. He had brains. So that in a way, he kind of reminded me of some uh, some fantasy villains I had read from the 80s and 90s, as well as from movies of that era, like Einon from Dragonheart.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a very positive reaction to Eamon because I like that he was clever. I like that he was brutal. Like I said, he reminded me of Einon from Dragonheart. I really love Dragonheart. I really like Einon as a villain. So to me, that was like, oh, okay, so he's like him,
Yeah,
brutal
there
and
definitely
whatnot.
is a big enjoyment of a competent bad guy, right? Because that's the thing with Joffrey and Ramsay. Neither of them come off as incredibly competent. You
They're
know,
stupid,
like Ramsay a little bit. The show gives him a little bit more, but
but he's not exactly bright.
yeah, I mean, there's you're intimidated by the power the influence they have, not the actual power behind them.
Yeah, because if you were to get them alone, um, they're not particularly impressive fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas with the likes of, say, Aemond, you get the sense that he could take someone on in a fight. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh
um,
yeah, because I think he was known for being a great swordsman in the books, and in the show, he's seen besting Kristen Cole.
yeah. And Kristen Cole was the one he was squired to, I believe, in the book. And if you were to tell me he could take on Kristen Cole in the book, I'd be like, yeah, I totally could see it. So the show actually having him best Cole, I think makes a lot of sense. In that regard, I was like, yeah, I like that. That's what I expect from the show. Yes, thank you. And I think he's probably the best fighter of all the Green siblings. But I
Oh,
also
of
think
course. His only like what's his competition?
Daron.
Daron, really?
But I
Like
think
I don't
that
mean to shit on Daron, but like there, nah.
and I think that Aemond, though, there's something like in the show before the one scene at the end. Um, I didn't think they were playing into the sympathetic angle. I thought they were showing him as he is in the book. I didn't see any distinction between book and show up to a certain point, and I think that that's a that's a that's something that the show deserves a lot of credit for, and that the the most vicious part of him in the show that and I really liked was that scene at the dinner table when Viserys is going, for the love of this old man, will you please just make peace? And I like how you have most of the characters going, fine, okay, I guess we could try to make at least pretend for a few minutes. And you just have Aemon who's just like strong siblings, and he's got no interest in appeasing his father. He doesn't even like. I didn't get the sense he cared about his old man at all. Which, in my opinion, Aemon should be a psychopath. He should be like Joe Carroll from The Following. There's no good in him. So he doesn't care about his old man and appeasing him and making him feel good for a few minutes before he dies.
So
So
I can understand what you're going with, and I feel like it's a very subjective thing in this regard on what's better, book versus show. Do you like the more sympathetic aspect, or do you like the more cold, pitch black evil guy? And it just
normally,
depends on the villain and his entertainment value for me.
exactly.
Because, like, when you think of the most famous villains to ever be made, Darth Vader, like almost every Disney villain from the Golden Age. But I will say, like, a lot of it is the entertainment aspects. And for me, the most part, he's still very entertaining, even with
Yep.
these sympathetic aspects.
Well, yeah, and I think it is about entertainment. The same rule applies in uh, novels, in video games, and whatnot. Um, like you have, for example, uh, you have weirdly, I always thought of Achilles from the Iliad as a bit of a villain, but I find he's almost a semi-sympathetic villain, semi, and like putting him in that category. Or Darth Vader is supposed to be a semi-sympathetic villain, semi, not entirely, but you
But
kind of
Darth Vader's never isn't that sympathetic until like the second or maybe the third movie.
yeah. And in that regard, you've got him in one category, and then you've got like um, Palpatine or um, sorry, excuse me, or uh, Doom from I think it is from the Conan the Barbarian movie. These are wholly irredeemable, unsympathetic villains, but they're just sheer darn entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
So Aemond is someone whom it's a subjective matter. Yeah, which one do you prefer? And I'm gonna ask you, Jasper, which one do you prefer? in this case.
So I think I'm actually, and I could go back and forth. This isn't a hill I'm going to die on, but I think I do prefer the more sympathetic angle because I think we all love a good villain, but I do think there has to be some level of sympathy or connection when you're going to be as prominent in the story as Aemond is. Like, think about all the point of view characters, for example, like from the books and the show of Game of Thrones. There is a level of sympatheticness and attachment you can have to characters, even characters. I mean, heck, maybe that adds to it, but take Tyrion, for example. He's one of the cruelest sons of bitches ever, and like he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy by all accounts, but there is that general connection and entertainment we have from him. And I think a lot of it kind of draw from the sympathy. So I think when Aemond is this prominent, and we will be focusing on likely even more in upcoming seasons, there has to be that kind of little bit of an anchoring to put all of his crazy and more brutal actions into perspective.
I'm gonna agree and disagree at the same time.
Well, that's an oxymoron.
Yeah, I know. I have to try to do that. I'm contrarian. I'm French, but the I think that it is important to have it in context. I think it is important that uh, we see him from a different angle to an extent. Now, uh, where I was going to suggest that I thought they were going to go was that they were going to put his relationship with what is it, Maris Baratheon? What's her name?
The
Did I?
woman he marries, that's his spell, Elise Rivers. I don't think he married her.
Oh, I.
I think it was just a
Oh,
betrothal.
okay, or at least his relationship with, uh, yeah, with either her or what's her face Rivers. The I thought that they were going to show that relationship in a more sympathetic light, like where you genuinely see that he does love this woman, but it's just that he has um, certain tendencies and proclivities for murder that like he's like I just kind of thought we'd see almost a compartmentalization on his part where he loves his woman. Um, he he does care about any future children he has, but on the other side of it, he's like Jack the Ripper. He just can't help but murder, murder, murder.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know it's just that I've looked at some psychology and whatnot, um, just in passing. So, and you look at certain figures in history, there are some figures whom uh, could have, on the one hand, a tender side with some people, and then just prove to be utterly brutal monsters at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then you also have some figures who were utterly noble and heroic, and honestly, were basically almost perfect individuals. Almost, not quite, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have different types of people in history, and I thought that Eamon would be a certain type. In the show, they flipped that on its head, which I guess I could see why people would like that. I just prefer. I would just. I just wanted to see a really really scummy guy, and
You see,
I guess
that's the thing. I don't think his sympathetic, like those sympathetic aspects, fully take away from his scummy nature. I do think like a lot of his actions, because here's the thing: as far as sympathetic changes and whatnot, there's only really one big one, I'd say, and that's at the end when he
yeah,
kills his half brother, or fake half brother, because they
well,
change it to where it's an accident instead of him actually doing it. Everything that happens before, I wouldn't say is a departure, if really at all, from his book counterpart.
yeah. Now him demanding an eye for an eye, that made sense. Now in the book, he's instigated into giving chase by Maris Baratheon, the one he's engaged to, and he decides, sure. The only thing is, he then derives a little too much satisfaction from the murder, and I actually think that the show scene was really weak, and I found it actually really boring. Weirdly, I just watched the scene and I went, "Wait, that's it? You mean you could have had a great horror kind of scene, like a Jaws type scene, and you chunked out on me?
What do
What the
you
heck?"
mean? What do you mean? They did it masterfully. When you see Lucerys flying through the storm, and they do the whole Jaws thing. You see Verm.
Well, I like the size difference part. That part was good. I just mean, when he comes out of the clouds, almost, you know what I mean? Like when he looms in, that's great. I just mean that when they have Aemond pussy out and just say, no, 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 whatnot. I hated that. No, have him revel in it, laugh maniacally. Like, that's, I'm not going to lie, that's my favorite Aemond scene in the book.
I
I
don't.
really like that scene.
I disagree with that because I think, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm giving too much hope to the writers, which I probably shouldn't. But I think that this is going to be the catalyst to what kind of gets us the more blood hungry Aemond in the books. Because it's kind of like how Jaime being called the Kingslayer has affected him. Aemond now, for a lot of people, is a kinslayer.
Yeah.
So I think
Although,
this
bear in
aspect,
mind,
I think, like I said, I think he's going to go, and I don't think he's going to like defend himself. I don't think he's going to be like, it was an accident or anything like that. I think he's going to own it. I think he's going to say, yeah, I killed the bastard. Because, like, and he's probably going to make some excuse like he shares no blood with me, which, is obviously false because his half sister gave birth to him, so there is some blood there. But I think that's going to be the aspect because I don't see Aemond admitting to this, and I also like it because it kind of gives the dragons a bit more autonomy and danger. We have to
I'm
remember that these are massive, powerful beasts that aren't super. That I like the idea that the Targaryens have control over them, but there's limits.
now I'm actually going to agree with you there and just say that I like that there are limits to the target's control. Although with Aemond, what I liked was that um, I guess I always had the idea that where does the dragon begin, where does the rider end? When it came to Aemon and I think it's Vagar. And the reason I had this notion with him is just that I kind of thought of the two as almost a pair by the time of the Dance of the Dragons. So, in that regard, I kind of think that you should do that with each of the dragon characters. But I like it's to my mind, it's one thing to have like for example, what is it? I think Sunfire, who devoured. No, wait, I can't.
It's actually good. Your mic cut out right when you were talking about it.
Okay, good. But Sunfire and Aegon, like one going out of control, like the dragon going out of control at a few points, uh, out of Aegon's control, I would kind of like that idea and would fit with my idea of the character. Whereas with Aemond, I kind of think that um, it's almost like I kind of read the story and thought of him and Vagar as almost sharing the same spirit. You know what I mean? Like they're almost one person. And it's a matter that I guess I kind of read it as um, is Aemond riding Vagar, or is Aemond in a way a extension of Vagar? Like I kind of read it either way. I kind of like that, and as well. So I guess I was looking at Aemond from a different angle
Mm-hmm.
than what some might. I don't know if it's a common way of looking at him that way. Um, so yeah, I just think that Aemond. Now, if he goes on to own the action and whatnot, okay. Um, but on future rewatches, I'm never going to rewatch that scene just because I'm a little irritated.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, um, what's funny is that I had in mind that what I expected was that he would kind of own the action, but Boros Baratheon would come to regret it, and that we'd see Boros. go on to regret and regret over it because this he kind of inadvertently um, caused that, and it would fit with the nature of the Baratheons, at least in regards to Robert Baratheon, who at his core deep down was not such a bad guy. But this isn't about Game of Thrones, but this is about House of the Dragon. And yeah, Aemon, though, I wonder what kind of reception he's going to get when he gets back home. I don't think his, uh, well, or, well,
Well, we do have a bit of an idea how the reception is going to be. We know who's going to be happy and who's going to be disappointed.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I think that what also startled me was that Aemon has a certain bitterness towards Aegon in the show,
Mm-hmm.
which um, I actually found that an interesting aspect of that relationship. But on the other hand, I kind of feel like they missed the boat on all the characterization for Aegon, and that it might have been interesting to cast Aegon in the more sympathetic light, but have the two still be close. And this might be one of the sympathetic points for Aemond, where, like I said, reading the book, I was like, oh, he's a total psycho. But I kind of thought that, is it Alice Rivers? I think it is that Aemon ends up.
Yeah, that's his alleged spouse.
Okay, so Alice Rivers and Aegon would be his two, where he's soft towards people, like where he genuinely loves these two. And I kind of thought that they'd go in that direction when the show was announced. And I was like, okay, so those are going to be the two people he's always, um, he loves and he'll do anything for.
So I don't
But
know, because that's the whole thing. Like Alice Rivers, maybe, but even the books, I never got much of brotherly love between the two. Like
well,
there's one moment where Aegon like talks about I love you, Aemond, good job, and we know, and it's going to be coming up in the next season. But like I always felt, I think the way they took it, where Aemond is bitter at Aegon for being the rightful king, when he, in his mind, would be far better. And in
that
the show, it's I'd say it's fairly true in the show, but it's hard to be worse than Aegon.
I agree.
So I think that a more accurate representation of the book would be like after like him kind of planning on taking over,
That I could see.
like because there's moments in the books I can't go into too much detail, but there are moments, and I think because of those moments he would very much see as himself as, by the end of everything, the king.
There's one moment I won't mention where I'm kind of like, I get the impression Eamon is scheming against Aegon. Um, it's one very important scene, and it's just I had the impression earlier they would have Eamon genuinely care for his brother, but then there's a slow poisoning of the relationship that happens until that scene. That's what I meant. Like that's kind of what I had in my mind's eye how it would work. But they're going in a different direction. They're doing things a little quicker than um, I thought they would. Uh, but I actually don't mind it, and I actually kind of get it, and I think that Aemond, we actually get to see what kind of king he would be because, well, I can't get into that, but even then, from what we can see in the show, given his behavior, whatnot, he'd be a terrible monarch. He's too impulsive. He's psychotic. Like even in the show, he's a little psychotic at times. Um,
Yeah, he's Diet Damon.
yeah, yeah, and he's oh boy, like there. If there's someone you need to keep from the crown, it's him. And it's just I don't think he'd be as bad as in the show at least. He's not as bad as what Joffrey uh, was,
Yeah.
but in the book, I'd say in some ways he's worst because, well, in the book I'm just saying he's kind of a little more psychotic
Hmm.
from what I've seen, and
Of course, a pro Black Maester wrote the book.
but let's be honest, the show is kind of they're skirting a more middle path, but as you commented, they're probably going to steer him towards the psychopath who, in a little bit. It's just they're going to take it by incremental steps.
Yeah. I mean,
And
like I said, with as someone who like after reading the books who pretty much fully supported the blacks, it wasn't even that hard of a choice. I do like the effort of how many of the greens are being portrayed in a more sympathetic and humane manner, with the one exception being Aegon. I think they've done a great job in making all the more monstrous aspects of the greens a bit more human.
to an extent, um, I'm still frustrated about Aegon. Um,
You and me will
and
save that for my video.
yeah, and I'm going to be honest, Kristen Cole, I'm a little disappointed in because I'd rather him be a little more um, uh, unsympathetic in some ways.
Oh, well
But
that'll have to be talked about in the next video.
yeah, but on the black side, um, I think that I can't wait for what is it? I always get my Tullys mixed up in this era. Kermit, I think,
Hmm.
um, because we're kind of on the black side. This is a complaint I have, at least in the show, is that there is no sympathetic black, and we do need at least one.
I disagree that there's no sympathetic black. At the
Uh,
very least, Rhaenyra's kids are sympathetic because they didn't ask for any of this shit. It's their stupid ass mom that got them into this trouble.
yeah, I just find them bland and boring.
Yeah.
So I say roast them all. I don't care. Um, Corlys, Damon, I find that the show's not. Well, Corlys, I don't mind as much, but there are moments where it's like, what the heck? Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, cook them. And Damon, well, he's Damon. So I'm kind of going, ah, you know what? Just give me Kermit, Tully. I can get it. Give me one of the Muppet Tullys. They're pretty sympathetic. Give me them. I want to see them with plenty of screen time, just so that I have
Yeah.
like I like. Now on the other hand, I want to see Daron on the green side. Like I want one sympathetic character on each side and at least a few unsympathetic characters on each side.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
Yeah. I
Um,
think Daron is definitely going to do that for the greens, and I mean,
Absolutely.
obviously, I think Jacaerys with a little bit more moments in the show could probably fulfill that role out as well. And I think, yeah, that's kind of about it. Like you'll have like the non-Targaryens with like the Tullys. Like I'm actually really looking forward of some badass Tullys because in both
Yeah,
the books and the shows, despite being so powerful, like the only cool Tully is Brynden. So I'm really
yeah.
looking forward to some cooler Tullys. And Edmure gets too much shit on. Edmure's amazing. I take it back. Fuck every. Yeah. Anyways.
Edmure, I really like as a character because I'm well, just to really gloss over the original Song of Dancing or Song of Ice and Fire. The trouble is, Edmure is at least a decent guy and actually cares about the peasants and tries to do the best job he could, but no one ever communicates with him. And
You're
Brendan
right.
is just,
Maybe Robb
uh,
Stark should tell the guy who's in control of half of his kingdom what's going on. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, this is about Aemond.
yeah. And, but all I was going to say was that with the Tullys, you could be mistaken for forgetting that they're powerful because they just do screw all and they're just pathetically weak
I mean, it
in
doesn't
the
help
throne.
that the Lannisters pretty much steamrolled them and the Starks had to save them.
Yeah. Whereas I'm going to argue that in this era, the Tullys could steamroll the Lannisters and the Starks almost teaming up. Because, and I only argue that because you've got the current Lord Stark, who's, well, he reminds me of Walder Frey, and the current Lannisters are pretty. Um, I actually think they're kind of badass and talented in their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
But the trouble is, this era's Tullys are they're just powerhouses.
They get some moments, but I'd hesitate to say like it's not to an extent where they overshine. Maybe we'll have a Tully video when they're introduced. But anyways,
I can't wait for. That's the thing. I really can't wait for these Tullys. They're my favorite
oh,
characters of this era.
I
And
I mean,
I
let's be
actually,
honest. Half of it is because of their names, right?
yes, yes, I'm a Muppet fan. I can't help it.
It's
But on
time
the
to
other,
play the music. Okay.
we're together again. Boom, boom.
Waka waka. Okay.
But
So, in
that said,
regards
what I was going
to
to say,
getting a little bit back up
just
to
to
Aemond, though, what were some of your favorite moments for Aemond? Because mine, which I think
in
was
the show.
done well in the show, like let's try
Oh,
and keep it to the show continuity, just because if we go into the books, there are moments where it's a bit beyond. But my favorite is easily, after the whole spiel and situation with him losing his eye, pretty much tells his mom like, "It's okay, I got a dragon. It was worth it."
yeah, that was like, oh my gosh, this kid's a psycho. I was just like, okay, keep this kid away from said dragon because he's already drunk on the power. Like, oh gosh, this is not going to end well.
Oh, that's the thing. That's the thing. You looked at it and you were terrified. I looked at it and I was just like, slow clap. That's a Chad right there.
Yeah. But on the other hand, well, I guess I kind of looked at it and I was like, well, we've got our Jason Voorhees for the series. But on the other hand, um, I like the scene where he just says, strong siblings at the feast. I was just like, oh my
Mm,
gosh, he actually went there.
that was really good, and especially the moment beforehand. When I was watching this with my friend DJ Fella, they brought
Uh-huh.
the pig in, and it was set in front of him, and Lucerius is laughing, which pissed off Aemond. And we were like looking at it, it's just like, why? Why'd he laugh? What's so funny about this? And we made
I
the
didn't.
connection that it was because the pig was brought before him as the dragon to ride, remember?
Oh yeah, that I actually thought that the strong siblings were morons over that. And I was like, oh gosh, the stupid pig thing again. When are you gonna let that go, you stupid
I
punks?
mean, remember, Lucerius is like, what, still a young boy? Just, you can't help what he can laugh at.
I guess so, yeah.
And come on, seeing Aemond with his amethyst eye looking, 30 years old, riding a cooked pig, that's kind of funny.
True, true, true. And but Aemond, yeah, like
But
just
yeah,
that pig.
but the strong boys jibe at the feast, that was still a pretty good moment for him. Also,
Uh,
him besting Kristen Cole, even though it was just a moment, when you see him
yes,
like hold that sword to the guy's throat, I don't like. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could take that showing like, yeah, he's clearly superior to Kristen, which I don't know if I would say he's superior to Kristen in the books, just because Kristen is a beast in the books.
yeah, he is.
But it's a whether it's a change or not is debatable, but I think it's good because it amps up the tension for the future conflicts between him and Damon.
Well, yeah, yeah. I
Because we
just,
we know Damon's good, but at the same time, Damon got his ass kicked by Kristen.
yeah, yeah. That's why I always thought that. Uh, I always thought Eamon was better than Kristen in the book, but that this was something that the Greens had over the Blacks. The Greens had uh, Eamon and Kristen, and the Blacks had for their personal fighters, like the guys who can sword fight really well. They had, well, Damon and kind of the Muppet Tully, and I thought that these things kind of balance each other out. But on the other hand, I found that it was part of Damon's character development that, like he gets to where he is. But on the other hand, that said, the show is some of the ideas with Damon that I could see are really, really good. I really like the scene where he bests Cole. Um, I honestly didn't. I like the scene. I was like, oh, good. That's how I kind of perceived the characters in the book. But on the other hand, I'm surprised they did that. So good on them. So yeah, Cole though, um, Cole and Aemond having the relationship they do have was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
Although I kind of would have liked to see some of the years where, like, I kind of would have liked to see Aemon Squire proper for Christian.
Yeah, that would be nice, but I wonder, like, the season itself was pretty. I'm not going to say bloated, but there was just a lot in it. So a part of me wonders if they're like, okay, let me take that back. There's definitely some scenes they could have cut and had Aemon serving under Kristen. So yeah, maybe a few more kind of moments of the two. Maybe showing how much more attention or how much more driven Aemond is by talking to Kristen to train him to like when he's younger to give you an idea like yeah this kid's more driven than all the others.
Yeah, but um, I think that's I think that's about it for Aemond so far that we can talk about because if we go any further, I think we're going to start getting into the next season.
Yeah,
And,
book spoilers
uh,
because it pretty much ends right when he kills Lucerys in the show, so we can't really talk about anything that comes up next. But
mm,
we got to save some stuff so that way we can do part two of all these episodes.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, so I mean, in this case of this character, you prefer the books, while I seem to be in more favor of the show.
yeah,
Alrighty, alrighty. Um, but yeah, I'm thinking about other things we can talk about in regards to him. Da, 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 da. Yeah, didn't have much of a relationship with his father. Nothing. He was probably the only son more ignored by Alicent than Aegon. Yeah, I think a lot of the meat on the bones that we can go over will have to wait until the next season, and then we can compare and contrast those.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Uh,
with that
oh, there's
square. Oh,
one last
go
thing.
ahead.
There's one last thing. One thing I would have liked them to have shown was maybe this might sound weird, but one thing about having a more psychotic Aemond I kind of would have liked is to show that maybe the idea that this would have, in my head, probably, I don't know if this is true, but I think it would have kind of humanized Alicent in a way, in that um, if they, like, depending on how psychotic Aemon would be as a kid growing up and whatnot, I kind of had the mental thought that maybe the thought that she would have a inkling of what kind of monster he's going to become, and she's like, ah, shoot, no, 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 no. You know what I mean? She's scared of him. If they had leaned into that, I thought that would have been interesting.
Could be, but that kind of stuff can still happen.
Yeah. Well, I just mean like where maybe when he had that, don't worry, mom, I got a dragon, the deal, worth it. I think maybe they should have had her kind of start to realize her son is, um, you know what I mean? Like she may not have a full grasp of what he's capable of.
Nah, I think I disagree with that. I think a lot of it probably depends on the medium, but for a parent to see their child as a monster, I think you need something bigger than that.
Yeah, I know. I just meant she's starting to get an inkling, and then it's later that she realizes, oh yeah, he's kind of a psycho. But no, I just mean like slowly, incrementally show her growing a little afraid of him. and realizing that um, he's more like his uncle in
I
some ways.
I think the moments where he killed Lucerys, I think that can be used for this aspect
Fair enough.
much better than him, you know, making a very
Yeah,
badass
that, that,
statement.
that's a good point, and that'll be probably the one of the best moments in season two.
Yeah. And maybe they can
Cause
also use this aspect to make him seem more clever, using the accidental kinslaying to make him more intimidating to everyone around. Maybe he's going to use that to have a bit
yeah,
more pull, and it might bite him in the ass as well.
I guess, but I just kind of look at it as yeah, but it'd be way better if he had meant it and had enjoyed it, and I guess yeah, I guess. Um, but now we're back to that, so I think that is it, and we've picked out all the meat on the bone. Um, oh, one last thing.
Okay.
I would have liked to see maybe one or two more scenes between him and Damon.
Yeah, I don't think they share a real scene, right? Like the best we get is at the feast when they're breaking up the fight.
Yeah, I would have liked to see maybe another scene after that between the two. Um, like uh, something like where maybe Damon, kind of threatens him, and you have Aemond who's like, "Yeah, I ain't scared of you," and you have Aemond who maybe just replies to Damon like, "You won't always be around to protect your wife and kids."
Yeah, I can firmly agree on that. There should have been a much more like a bit of a verbal sparring match between the two.
Yeah, that would help build up the rivalry between the two because there is a rivalry that's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're kind of the Damon. Well, you know what I mean. They're kind of the rogue princes of either side.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But anyways,
Yeah, that
um,
I would love to see that. Oh man,
yeah,
why'd you have to bring that up? Now I'm sad we don't have it. Because they can't. It's much more difficult to justify such a scene now with the war pretty much breaking out.
yeah. I just realized I was about to say, well, we might get that, but now I'm like, oh yeah, we can't.
I mean,
Uh,
there is one moment in the books where we might get something like that, but at that moment it's going to be a little
too late.
overshadowed.
Yeah. But you know what? Um, we'll get what we get, and
We'll complain either way.
yeah,
All right, but
yeah,
I have to say, as always, thank you so much for having me on for your video. Always a pleasure to have these discussions with you.
yep. And to our beloved audience, don't forget to smash that like button for this video and to also subscribe not only here, but also over on Jasper's channel, as his is one of the best channels on all things Game of Thrones. So do hurry on over there. And, well, do take care, everyone.
That's right. Obviously, make sure to check out more videos on this channel, especially if you like Conan the Barbarian. I've been learning so much, despite my only real uh, consumption of the franchise being Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies.
Which were great.
They were pretty good. But with all that squared away, see you everyone until next time, and have a wonderful day till then.